Okay, and you're over there in the Senate recording studios. So I noticed that the Senate just passed the debt ceiling bill back to the House, and there's a lot of other stuff I'm sure going on. So what's on your mind?
All right, let me try to, if people are looking at the front pages of the papers or they're watching TV, I think there's probably a lot of confusion as to what is going on in this dysfunctional world here in Washington, D.C. So let me try to briefly tell you try to explain it. The fiscal year ends at the end of this month, and that's Monday. And what Republicans are trying to do is to say that they will shut down the government, not fund it for the next year, unless, among many other things, we defund the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. Now, it seems to me, and I say this, Tom, as an advocate of a Medicare for all single-payer system, we can have a lot more discussion about how you improve Obamacare, how you deal with the fact that 28 million Americans will still remain uninsured, how you deal with the tax on strong health care plans that union workers have fought for, and other problems within the Obamacare program. But what you do not do, it seems to me, is shut down the federal government, tell the men and women who are in Afghanistan or around the world defending this nation that, sorry, you may not get a paycheck. You don't tell the police officers here or defending the nation's capital, well, you may not get a paycheck. You don't tell moms who today are walking their kids into a Head Start program, well, we're sorry because we are insistent on defunding the Affordable Care Act. We may have to shut down your Head Start center, or we may have to shut down and eliminate the Meals on Wheels program for low-income senior citizens, or the WIC program for women, pregnant women and children, or furlough people who are on the FBI. That is not what you do. And the ugliness of what's going on now is that in terms of the Affordable Care Act, it was passed 3 years ago by the Congress, signed by the president. Republicans took it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled it constitutional. We had an election, and Republicans lost seats in the Senate. They lost seats in the House, and President Obama won a huge victory. And one of the central issues of the campaign was the Affordable Care Act. So what Republicans are saying, we don't care about all of that. We now have the power, and we're going to use the power to try to eliminate funding for the Affordable Care Act, and we really don't care what the implications of that. And then on top of that, I know this gets confusing here, in a few more weeks, in mid-October, the United States government will run out of money to pay its debts. We have a lot of obligations, and it would be incomprehensible for the first time in the history of the United States of America that the faith and credit of the United States government was destroyed, that we became a deadbeat nation, and that we refused to pay the bills to the people we owe. Now, nobody knows what that would mean, but what many economists are saying is if the most powerful economy in the world is unable to pay its bills, this will at the very least lead to higher interest rates, very serious pressure on the international financial community, certainly a reduction in the GDP, many lost jobs. That's at the best. The worst case could be a lot worse than that, because when you are the largest economy in the world and you don't pay back money to people that you owe money, it creates an unbelievable moment of uncertainty around the entire world. So that's what our Republican friends are saying. Rather than arguing their points of view, trying to get the changes, or at least having a debate, what they are essentially, for the first time, really prepared to hold hostage the American economy, millions of working people, federal employees who may not get a paycheck, vulnerable people who benefit from federal programs. I mean, if this government is shut down, what you will find is people will, we think, get their Social Security checks, But if you're applying for Social Security, your claims will be processed much slower. We're not going to have workers to process the claims. If you're applying for veterans benefits, claims will be processed much slower. If you're applying for small business grants, those will be processed much slower. So it will be a real setback for the economy and millions of people. That's issue number one. I think the second point to be made, and that needs to be explained to many people, is that this fight against the Affordable Care Act, not Obamacare, is just a small example of what these right-wing extremists stand for. Senator Cruz, who was on the floor for 21 hours the other day, I obviously did not agree with much of what he said, but he said one thing that I did agree with, and he said, we need a real debate about the fundamental issues facing this country, and he's quite right. As part of that debate, we need to know where folks like Senator Cruz are really coming from. And as I pointed out last week, if people go, just get on the website, go to the Texas Republican State Platform, which is, the platform of maybe the most powerful Republican state in this country, which has a huge impact on Republicans all over America. Find out what they stand for and what they stand for, and they spell it out. This is not Bernie Sanders telling you. This is what is in their platform. They stand for the repeal of Social Security. They want to do away with Social Security. They want to privatize veterans' health care. And many veterans, the 6 million veterans who utilize VA health care, will be very surprised to find out that the Republicans want to end that, voucherize that program. They want to abolish the minimum wage. They want to repeal the minimum wage. I want you to stop and think about it. We got millions of people in this country who are working for horrendously low wages. Minimum wage federally is $7.25. You got people working $8, $9, $10 an hour. What I believe we need to do is substantially raise the minimum wage to a living wage. These guys do not only not want to raise the minimum wage, they want to abolish it. And what they want to do is have a situation where there's a high unemployment area, where workers are desperate for jobs, and you'll have employers saying, I'm going to offer you $4 an hour. I'm going to offer you $3 an hour. You could take it or leave it, but that's all you're getting. And in the midst of all of this stuff, doing away with Social Security, voucherizing Medicare, cutting Medicaid, privatizing the Veterans Administration, doing away with minimum wage, they do this under the name of quote unquote freedom, you see? So if you're sitting somewhere in Texas and your child gets sick and seriously ill and you don't have any health insurance, you're free. You're really free because the federal government is not there. And if you're working for $3 an hour, you're really free because the federal government doesn't have a minimum wage. And if you're living in a community where a corporation is dumping crap into your lake or to your rivers or polluting the air, and we got rid of the EPA, which is what these guys want to do, well, you're free now to breathe all that crap and get sick because you don't have that terrible government hanging around you. So I think this is a debate that needs to be had. And I think when people understand what right-wing extremism is about, they will reject it.